I used to believe that wealth was only about money, that success was measured by numbers in a bank account, by cars in a garage, and by the size of a house. But I was wrong. True wealth begins long before you ever see a dollar. It begins inside the mind. It begins with the belief that you already have everything you need to become everything you want to be. I remember the day my perspective changed. I was sitting on a cracked wooden bench in a small park, staring at my empty wallet. The wind was cold, and so was my spirit. Bills were due. Dreams felt distant, and I asked myself the question that most people ask when life feels too heavy: why me? Then I looked up. I saw a man jogging past me with one leg and a prosthetic. He was smiling. He was not running fast, but he was running with purpose. And in that moment, I felt something inside me shift. I realized that wealth has nothing to do with what you hold in your hand. It has everything to do with what you hold in your heart. I started to look around me. The laughter of children on the swings, the sunlight warming my face, the trees swaying like dancers in the wind. That was wealth. That was abundance. I was breathing. I was alive. And as long as I was alive, I had a chance to build. From that day on, I made a promise to myself. I would never again say, I am broke, because words are seeds and what you speak grows. If you say you are broke, you will live in scarcity. If you say you are wealthy, your mind begins to see possibilities instead of problems. I started with nothing but belief, and that belief began to shape my world. When I woke up each morning, I said a thank you. When I faced challenges, I said, this is my opportunity. When people doubted me, I said, I am still becoming. Slowly, my energy changed, and so did my life. Opportunities began to appear, not because the world suddenly became easier, but because I started to see what was already around me. I stopped chasing wealth, and wealth started chasing me. I learned that rich people are not rich because of what they have. They are rich because of how they think. They think in terms of growth, gratitude, and giving. They understand that money is a tool, not a treasure. It amplifies who you already are. If you are kind, it allows you to help more people. If you are creative, it allows you to build more freely. If you are disciplined, it allows you to grow faster. So I began to change my habits. Instead of complaining, I started creating. Instead of wishing, I started working. Instead of envying others, I started studying them. Every day I invested in myself, books, skills, health, mindset. Because the greatest investment you can ever make is in the person you are becoming. One evening, I sat again on that same park bench. But this time, I was not empty. My wallet was not full yet, but my heart was overflowing. I had learned to appreciate the value of peace, purpose, and persistence. That is when I understood wealth is not a destination. It is a mindset. It is waking up with gratitude. It is knowing that you are enough even before the world validates you. When I started to live with that energy, everything began to align. I attracted better people, better opportunities, better outcomes, because abundance responds to those who expect it, not those who doubt it. Every thought is a currency. Every action is an investment. Every day is a transaction between who you are and who you want to be. So when life tries to convince you that you are lacking, remember this: you are already rich with time, with breath, with potential. You have everything you need to start creating the life you desire. You just have to decide that your wealth begins now. Because wealth is not waiting for you in some faraway future. It is already inside you, waiting for you to claim it. And as I stood up from that park bench, I whispered to myself, I am wealthy. I always have been. The air felt lighter. The world looked brighter. And I knew that from that moment on, nothing could ever make me feel poor again. Because once your mind becomes rich, your life will follow. From that day forward, I began to see the world differently. Every interaction, every moment, every decision became a chance to create wealth. Not just money, but value, impact, and meaning. I noticed the beauty in small victories, the way a smile could brighten a room, the way helping someone else could make my own heart richer. I realized that wealth is measured in experiences, not possessions. In lessons learned, not certificates earned. In people touched, not numbers counted, tracking my growth differently. Not by the zeros in my bank account, but by the number of times I overcame fear. By the challenges I turned into opportunities. By the persistence I showed when the world told me to stop. Every morning became a ritual of affirmation. I am wealthy in knowledge, in courage, and resilience. I am wealthy in relationships, in faith, and purpose. I am wealthy in ideas, in action, and impact. And slowly I saw the universe respond. Opportunities that once seemed distant began to appear. People who once ignored me began to notice my energy. Doors that were closed before started opening. I understood something profound. Wealth does not chase those who wait. It flows to those who prepare. It flows to those who see abundance where others see lack. It flows to those who give first and believe in their own value. But more importantly, I invested in myself. I invested in my mindset. Because the richest people are those who understand that their thoughts are their capital. Every time doubt crept in, I countered it with belief. Every time fear whispered, I spoke louder. I am wealthy. I am enough. I am capable. These words became my shield, my compass, my foundation. And I discovered a secret many people overlook. You cannot build true wealth if your heart is bankrupt. If you are constantly chasing without gratitude, you will never feel abundant. So I practiced gratitude relentlessly. For the air I breathe, for the friends who supported me, for the lessons that challenged me, for the mistakes that taught me. Gratitude transformed my perspective. It made my life feel larger, richer, and more abundant than I ever imagined. Because once your mind understands that you already have enough, you begin to see wealth in every corner of your existence. I began to set ambitious goals, but I did so with calm confidence. I understood that wealth is not about rushing to the end. It is about building consistently, patiently, and intelligently. I worked tirelessly, but not blindly. I focused on compounding small wins, knowing that over time, they would lead to monumental results. Every book I read, every skill I mastered, every connection I made was an investment in my future self. And then I noticed something extraordinary. I was no longer afraid of failure. Because wealth had taught me resilience. Because abundance had taught me perspective. Because the energy I carried within me became more valuable than anything money could buy. People began to call me wealthy. But I smiled, knowing that their definition of wealth was limited. The real wealth, I realize, is invisible to the eye. It is the confidence that you can handle anything life throws at you. It is the courage to dream bigger. It is the peace that comes from knowing you have enough and you can create more. I am wealthy in vision. I am wealthy in passion. I am wealthy in relationships that nurture and challenge me. I am wealthy in opportunities that expand my life and the lives of others. And I realize that wealth grows when shared. When you give knowledge, kindness, time, or resources, you create a flow that multiplies beyond measure. The more you give, the more you receive. The more value you create, the richer you become. Even in the hardest times, even when scarcity seemed all around me, I held on to this truth. I am wealthy. Not because of what I own, but because of who I am becoming. Because wealth is not a number. It is not a destination. It is a mindset, a lifestyle, a way of seeing abundance in the world and in yourself. I began to dream bigger than ever before. And with every dream, I acted knowing that every step I take builds the life I desire. Every challenge is a stepping stone. Every failure is a lesson. Every effort compounds into greatness. I understood that the mind of a wealthy person does not think in limitations. It thinks in solutions, in possibilities, in growth. And as I stood on the edge of my own potential, I whispered to myself, I am wealthy. I have always been wealthy. And I will continue to grow, create, and give more than ever before. The wind felt warmer that day. The sun felt brighter. And I knew without doubt that true wealth was not ahead of me. It was already inside me, and the journey to abundance had just begun. I started to notice the subtle ways wealth manifests in everyday life. The morning sunlight streaming through the window, the taste of coffee on my tongue, the laughter of a friend on the phone, the energy that fills my body when I take action toward my dreams. These were the real treasures. They cost nothing, yet their value is infinite. I began to see opportunities where others saw obstacles. Conversation with a stranger became a doorway to collaboration. A challenge at work became a chance to innovate. A small setback became a lesson that saved me from a much bigger mistake later. I understood that every moment has potential. Every choice carries weight. And the wealthiest people are those who recognize that life itself is abundant, even when it appears scarce. I made a decision to think bigger, to dream without limits, to set goals that scared me. Because wealth grows when you stretch your mind beyond comfort. I read more. I studied success in all forms. I absorbed knowledge like a sponge. I invested in experiences that expanded my perspective. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me higher. And slowly the universe began to respond. Doors I never thought existed started opening. People who doubted me before started asking for my advice. Projects I never imagined began to take shape. But I knew that this was not the real measure of wealth. The real measure was inside me. It was in my mindset, my discipline, my capacity to give, my courage to keep growing. I became intentional with my time. Every hour spent mindlessly became a wasted investment. Every hour spent learning, creating, or helping someone became a deposit into my life's bank of abundance. I learned that money follows value. Opportunities follow action. And abundance follows a mindset that refuses to settle for less than greatness. I began to practice gratitude like a ritual. Every morning I wrote down 3 things I was grateful for. Not just the big wins, but the small blessings, the quiet moments that go unnoticed. And with each note of gratitude, my inner wealth grew. I began to see setbacks differently. Failure was no longer an enemy. It was feedback. It was a sign that I was learning, adapting, and moving closer to my goals. I stopped comparing myself to others. Comparison is the thief of wealth, both mental and financial. I realized that my path is unique, and my abundance is tailored to me. I started taking risks that scared me. Because wealth favors the bold. It favors those who act despite fear. Those who believe that every challenge is an opportunity to create more value, more impact, and more freedom. And I discovered that giving amplifies abundance. The more I shared my knowledge, my time, and my resources, the more the universe rewarded me. Giving did not diminish me, it multiplied me. Every act of generosity became a deposit into my wealth that could never be taken away. I realized that wealth is a reflection of self-mastery. The more control you have over your mind, your habits, your actions, the richer your life becomes. The poor are not always without money, but often without focus, discipline, and belief. The wealthy are not always in fancy cars, but they are rich in energy, purpose, and opportunity. I began to speak differently. I am wealthy, I said. Not just in material things, but in mind, body, spirit, relationships, and opportunities. And then something incredible happened. The world responded, money came, opportunities multiplied. Confidence soared, influence expanded, but the greatest wealth I discovered was invisible. It was the peace I felt inside, the clarity I had about my purpose, the freedom to pursue my dreams without hesitation, and the joy of knowing I could create impact in the lives of others. Every setback now felt temporary. Every challenge felt like fuel. Every fear felt like a test of my commitment. And every day became an opportunity to expand my wealth. Not just financially, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. I realized that true wealth is never about what you can hold. It is about what you can create, nurture, and give. It is about building a life so abundant that scarcity cannot touch it. And in that realization, I whispered to myself, I am wealthy. I am rich in mind, body, spirit, and opportunity. And my wealth will continue to grow endlessly as long as I choose to create it. The air felt lighter, the world looked bigger, and I understood true wealth is not something you chase. It is something you awaken inside yourself, and that awakening is just the beginning of a life filled with limitless abundance. As I stood on that same street where my journey began, I realized how far I had come. The buildings were the same, the people were the same, but I was not, because wealth had changed me. Not the wealth in my wallet, but the wealth in my soul. I remembered the nights I almost gave up, the mornings I woke with doubt, the moments I questioned if all the effort was worth it. And I smiled, because I finally understood why those moments were necessary. They were not meant to break me. They were meant to prepare me, to build the kind of strength that cannot be shaken by circumstance, to shape the kind of mindset that does not crumble under pressure. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I could feel the power within me, calm, certain, unstoppable. It was not pride, it was peace. The peace that comes when you no longer chase abundance, but live in harmony with it. I realized that I had already become everything I once dreamed of being. Not because I owned more, but because I was more. More patient, more grateful, more disciplined, more alive. The sound of life surrounded me, the hum of traffic, the chatter of strangers, the rhythm of the world continuing on. And for the first time, I did not feel behind. I did not feel like I was racing anyone. I felt aligned with purpose, with vision, with abundance. That is when I understood the true meaning of being wealthy. It is not about reaching the top. It is about rising with integrity. It is not about having everything. It is about becoming someone who can create everything. Wealth, I realized, is not a goal. It is a state of being. It is the unshakable belief that life is happening for you, not to you. It is knowing that no matter what happens, you will always have enough, because you are enough. I smiled to myself and whispered softly, I am wealthy. Because I finally understood the richest life is not lived through possession, but through purpose. Not through having more, but through becoming more. And as I walked forward into the light of a new day, I carried that truth with me. A truth that would never fade. A truth that would guide me forever. Because I am not waiting to be wealthy someday. I am wealthy today in every possible way.